Well, hello, everyone, and a really warm welcome to this session this afternoon on mindfulness. So I'm Susan Booth, Executive Director of Development at Target Ovarian Cancer, and I am thrilled to welcome Trish Bartley to join us today to speak about mindfulness. So this session is taking place as a Zoom meeting. This means you've got the opportunity to turn on your camera, which you can do at the bottom of the video screen. But please be aware that we are recording the session so that we can share the video later on for those who are unable to make it today, and also to reach out to more people in future. So whilst we do our best to remove personal information from the recordings, as this is an interactive session, this may not be possible. So if you would prefer not to appear in the recording, please keep your camera off. And don't forget to unmute yourself if you want to join in the discussion. And please remember to switch your microphone off afterwards as well to avoid any feedback. So if you'd like to share your experience or make any comments, ask any questions or share tips that have worked for you, there's a chat function at the bottom of your screen, so please do use that, and I will collect the questions, and we'll do that towards the end of the session with Trish. And yeah, before we start, I'd just like to remind you, ask you to remember that everyone here has different circumstances and situations. Things you hear might be relevant to you or your loved ones, and they may not. Likewise, everyone is at different stages and coping differently, so please keep this in mind and respect everyone's views and concerns. We want to ensure that this session is a safe and positive space for everyone that takes part. And if you're taking part as a friend or family member, we ask that you don't ask questions based on your loved one's specific circumstances without their knowledge and permission. Anything that comes out of this session isn't medical advice and isn't a substitute for the information and advice that you've been given by your own clinical team. And again, with the questions, we're not able to offer answers to very specific individual situations today. This is about giving you an overview. So yeah, ask your questions and we'll see what we can do. And if there's anything that we're unable to get to today, don't forget, you can always phone our support line for more help. So if anything comes up today that you aren't sure about what it means for you and your loved ones, or if you have any other questions or concerns, as I said, call the support line, and you can find the number in our conference chat. And if any point today you want to take a break, please do. A recording is available afterwards, so you can catch up afterwards. So without any further ado, let's get started. I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to Trish. Trish, over to you.
Thank you, Susan. That's lovely. I'm so happy to be here. So impressed with Target Ovarian Cancer for running this conference. It's absolutely brilliant. I have to admit that although I completely understand that you may not want your face on the recording, I would dearly love to be able to see you. It would be so lovely because then I can speak to you rather than speaking to your name. So if you're feeling brave and if you're willing to let your camera, let your video come through, I think that whilst it's just me talking, it's not a problem. You'll find that the recording just has me. Oh, there we are. We've got Yvonne coming through. So those of you who are feeling brave, please show your camera because it's just so lovely to be able to see you all. Yes, some of you coming through, that's very nice, thank you. And then when we're having a conversation and when there's a discussion, you can always turn your camera off if you're keen not to be shown up on the recording. But when you see that little pin at the side of my screen, you'll know that the camera's just on me, poor camera. So that's how it is. Yes. So just to let you know that I'm Trish, as you know, that I've been involved with mindfulness and cancer for a very long time now, since 2001. I've worked with hundreds of people with cancer, and I've also trained mindfulness teachers to teach people with cancer. I've written a couple of books on the subject, and I'll tell you about those as I go through. Do chip in with your questions. That would be great. You can put them down in the chat, which is down at the bottom if you'd like to. Or you can perhaps raise your hand and we can take a question that way. And those of you who are willing to show your video, please do, because it would just be so lovely for me to be able to see you and speak to you directly. Okay, so I'm basically going to share some slides with you. And what I'm going to do is every now and again, I'm going to come out of the slides, guide a practice with you, which you can take part in. Oh, that's nice. Some more people coming. That you can take part in if you'd like to. And if you prefer not to, just don't. Just listen. It's absolutely fine. So doing whatever is best for you is always a good move, isn't it? Okay, so let's get going. And there's some more people coming. So that's really lovely to see you. And eating lunch while you're watching is perfect. And drinking your tea while you're watching is also perfect. Almost anything is perfect. I won't go into what isn't perfect because that wouldn't be appropriate. There we are. So here we are. This is a taster session. So that's important to emphasize that, if you were to do a full course, it would take 8 weeks. And actually a lot of people, well, me for one, I've been practicing mindfulness for 30 years or something, and can imagine that I shall be spending the rest of my life practicing mindfulness. So this isn't a sort of superficial approach, but what I'm going to offer you is a taste, a little bit like a little kind of, some of those posh restaurants do little taster menus, a bit of this and a bit of that. So I'm going to offer you a taste of mindfulness, and if you like it and you think it's helpful, you can take that taste away. You can use it in your life, and you can also come back for more. So if anybody wants to email me, get in touch via Target Ovarian Cancer, absolutely fine to email me, and I can give you information as to where you can find some mindfulness courses. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what mindfulness might have to offer you. It's going to be quite brief. But you might want to ask some questions around that. Whoops, I've gone too far. There we are. I want to offer some ideas for you. I want to offer you a brief practice, or even two if we have the time, if that goes all right. Just depends on how many questions you've got. And I have a poem for you, which I'm very fond of, which I think you might like at the end. So very, very brief background. Mindfulness-based approaches first started off in America with John Kabat-Zinn in the 1980s, and he was mostly working with people with pain, actually, sort of back pain, knee pain, and stress. So he called it mindfulness-based stress reduction, which was actually very canny of him because it wasn't sort of targeted on a particular illness. Everybody feels stress at different times. So he's the one who kind of started the modern version of mindfulness. And then there were these three brilliant psychologists who very much sort of moved into depression, and they developed something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for depression. Some of you may have done some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is often offered to people with cancer as well. And they kind of brought the two together, mindfulness and CBT, they brought it together. And then I came along much later, and I had cancer myself, and I started teaching people with cancer in 2001 in the same unit actually where I had treatment myself. And I was, you see that the foreword was by John Teasdale. So John Teasdale was one of the psychologists who developed MBCT. And he basically supported me for nearly 15 years to produce this book and to produce the program. And I like all my books to have daisies on them. There's something about daisies. They just come up all over the place, don't they, daisies? And I love them. These are moon daisies, and they remind me of those of us who've had cancer. You never quite know where the daisies are going to show up. You never quite know where cancer is going to show up, but it does. And so there's something in that. Now, in one of my books, and this is a later book that I'll tell you about a bit later on, which for those of you with cancer or having had treatment or perhaps going through treatment now, you may find that the more recent book is more helpful to you. So this is a picture really of somebody who who, you know, it's interesting, this picture, because this person has got no feet, and they're like a little bird. They're kind of folded up, or kind of hunched up, and there's sort of like, I don't know if you can see on my, Susan, can you give me thumbs up if you're seeing my mouse? Yeah, great. So you see that, oops, it's gone wrong. There we are. You'll see at the in the heart here, there's a sort of, it's almost like a bit of energy, something going on, a bit of pain going, mumbling sort of going on there. And there's something going on here in the head. And I think it's so clever that this is sort of, we close up when we're in trouble, when we've got a lot going on, when we've had a diagnosis, or we're waiting for treatment, or we've finished treatment, particularly when we finish treatment. There is this hunching up, there is this tightening and closing that tends to happen. When things are more settled, you see this picture I love. He or she has got their feet on the ground. That's terribly important. They've got their feet on the ground. There's a sense of movement, and you see that the arms are open and the chest is sort of opening, the heart is opening. And there's a sense of fluidity. I mean, not everybody wants to dance, but I think we all recognize that sense that actually when things are feeling better, when we're more relaxed, then we're more open and we're more grounded, we're more settled. So that's one of my big take-home messages, the business of grounding. So let's now move into grounding. This is a bench in my garden. Doesn't quite look like this anymore, but you've got some rosemary for remembering beside. Remember that thing, herbal rosemary? Apparently it's always for remembering. So I want to invite you, if you'd like to just imagine that you're sitting on my lovely oak bench. It's quite dry. And you've got your feet on the flagstones, on those Welsh stones actually, and you can smell the rosemary. And if you'd like to, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. If you'd prefer to keep them open, that's absolutely fine. You do whatever's right for you. If you prefer not to do this practice at all, that's also fine. But if it's okay for you, closing your eyes and just coming to a sense of your feet on the floor. So just seeing if you can find the soles of your feet and the contact points between your feet and the floor. So you might be noticing contact in toes. Perhaps not all of them, but perhaps in some of them. You might be noticing contact between the balls of the feet and whatever they're touching, so perhaps the shoes or the floor beneath you. You might be noticing the heels at the back. So just those points of contact. So really knowing this feet on the floor. And knowing this sense of the weight of the legs going down, connecting with the floor. Weight going down, feet on the floor. You might also notice a sense of the body on the seat. So feet on the floor, that's our first practice. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment. I'm going to come away from my nice oak bench. Just going to see some of you here, which is lovely. I can see a few of you. And anybody who's willing to share, or if you prefer, you can put something in the chat. You know, how was that practice for you? What did you notice when we did that little practice? Could you write into the chat, or if you're feeling brave, you can put your hand up and I'll call out your name, and you can just oh great, Avril, come through. Turn off the mute. Turn on your microphone if you can find it. That's great. What did you notice, Avril, when you did that practice? Hang on, I can't hear you. I might have my sound's all right. I can't hear you, Avril. Can you speak a bit louder? Oh, sadly, your microphone isn't working, Avril, which is so disappointing. Could you put it into the chat? Because I'd love to hear what you're saying.
Trish, I'll just I'll raise that with Alex as well.
Okay, it'll probably be Avril's microphone, I'm afraid. So I've heard from somebody, and Yvonne is saying that it had a calming effect. It's interesting that, isn't it? Is that true for anybody else? If you go to the bottom of your screen, you can see reactions. And if you hover your mouse on the reactions, if that works for any of you, you can just put something up, like a thumbs up. Do you see in my screen? You can put a thumbs up. or you can put I don't know, you can put that one, which means yeah, it was perhaps helpful. Kate is saying how strong the feeling was in my feet. That's right. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And somebody else is saying, let me see, I went into myself and I didn't think about my surroundings. All this is great. How about somebody who really couldn't get to their feet? Somebody who couldn't find their feet? Was there anybody who... Shall we have a quick declaration of it as well? So we're getting, so if Susan, if you could speak to Tech B, because we've got some sound coming in and we haven't got anybody off mute, so it must be coming in from their side. That would be good. Okay, so that's lovely. So isn't that interesting? Whatever you experienced with your feet on the floor, you know, it might be calming. It might be something that invites you just to really focus in. Oh, lovely. Poonans is saying, my feet felt heavy and I was able to focus fully. Lovely. And Anne Clark is saying, not getting distracted is very difficult. Anne, you're so right. You're so right. And what tends to happen, so Anne, I'm so glad you've put that in. What tends to happen, Anne, and what happens for all of us, including me, is that we go to the feet on the floor and then the mind jumps away. It's like, oh, I don't know, some thought comes in about, you know, what's it like to be in this conference with everybody with cancer? You know, I don't know. You know, do I like that pink on the screen? You know, what are her specs like? You know, we get all sorts of stuff, don't we, that comes in. And do you know what we do, Anne? That when we have those thoughts, what we do is we come back. So let me come back to the screen because we're already halfway through, so I need to crack on a bit. So here we are. We've been sitting on my oak bench, and you're so welcome to borrow my oak bench anytime you like. Anytime you like, you can look at the recording, you can plonk yourself on that oak bench, you can feel your feet on the floor and smell the rosemary. That would be great. So coming back, this is what we learn to do next. So we do feet on the floor, the mind wanders, it will, and we learn to come back. Okay, when you're next going for your next appointment, your next checkup, or perhaps your next treatment, you might be sitting in the waiting area and you might remember feet on the floor. What was that woman saying on that conference that we did at Mindfulness? Feet on the floor, okay? And then you'll see the nurse and you'll think, oh, is it my turn? Or what are they going to say this time? And the mind wanders off. It's not a problem. It's just what minds do. All minds wander, and we just come back. So we come back to sitting, feet on the floor, weight going down. So I love this cartoon. I hope you do too. So you've got a rabbit on the left who rather rudely is saying, what the hell is that? And then you've got a rabbit on the right who's saying, oh, it's just my mind. Okay. So out of this rabbit's mind, I hope you can all see, is just all this bundle of threads of thoughts, threads of worries, threads of anxiety, threads of memories, threads of judgment, all sorts, right? And the rabbit on the right is so wise. I like his little tail, don't you? The rabbit on the right is so wise because he's saying, oh, it's just my mind, right? It's just my mind. That's so important. So one of the things I want to share with you, which I imagine, apart from feet on the floor and my oak bench, you might well remember. Okay, so the mind is a little bit like Velcro. And I was so pleased to find these images. So what the mind tends to do is it tends to jump into negativity. So if there's a negative thought around, if there's a negative emotion around, if there's a worry, if there's a judgment, if there's a dread, whatever it is, then we tend to get stuck to it, because actually that's the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is to be on the lookout for threat. We're basically not that different from how we were all those hundreds and thousands of years ago when humans first evolved. And we evolved to look out for threat because that was important. Nowadays, we're much more into our heads. And so the Velcro is a kind of a metaphor for the way we get stuck in negativity. Now, the Teflon, as I'm sure you've already realized, is a non-stick saucepan, right? It doesn't stick. And this is a representation of all the lovely things in our lives. And even if we have cancer, even if we're having treatment, there are many things that happen in our lives that are really very pleasant. A flower, the sky, the look of the grandchild, somebody smiling at us in the street, a nurse being kind. You know, just, it can be very, very, very tiny, very, very tiny. But what tends to happen is that these more positive experiences, these things that we really appreciate, they just slide off because we're so busy, understandably, if you've had cancer or if you're having treatment for cancer, it's completely understandable. We get stuck in that negativity. And if we can just remember that and actually almost train ourselves to remember the Teflon and to just spend a little bit of time every day really noticing and appreciating something that you love, something that's lovely, something that's kind, something that's just pleasant. So I hope you're going to remember that, you know, the Velcro and the Teflon, and as best we can, we turn towards not so much the difficult, because you haven't got enough practice yet, unless you've already got some training in mindfulness. But we certainly turn towards the lovely. We include it. This little cartoon, you know, the bird in the tree, the home with hopefully a little bit of a nice warm fire in the home. So kindness is the other important tool. Kindness, you know, a kind of gentleness towards ourselves, a kindness towards ourselves. It's very tough. We're not taught to be kind when we're young. We're not taught to be kind, but kindness is very important. And actually, there's a way we can transform difficulty with kindness, with the kindness of others, with the kindness of ourselves. So as we come towards the end, I want to just come back to this feet on the floor, and I want to add a breath in there as well. So those of you taking notes is lovely, but if you could bear to put your pen down for now and just come back to the practice, that would be great. Come back to your tea if you'd like to. And just coming back to one more time, placing your feet on the floor. Sitting on my oak bench. It's very old, it's solid Welsh oak. Oak is all to do with courage. We need courage. People with cancer need courage. So just sitting on the bench and feeling a sense of your feet on the floor. So can you just place your attention into your feet on the floor? Contact between your feet and what they're resting on. Just a sense of being held. If you want to move into detail, you can come to the toes, balls at the feet, heels at the back. Sense of the weight going down, letting gravity pull you downwards and bring you closer to the earth, this precious earth of ours, this precious ground. So body sitting, but you can do this standing. I'm not suggesting you need to stand now, but you can do feet on the floor standing, perhaps when you're boiling the kettle, you're stirring the soup. You can do feet on the floor when you're walking, so just every now and again feel that landing of the foot on the floor. And you can do feet on the floor when you're lying in bed, perhaps having difficulty getting back to sleep. You can do body on the bed, body on the mattress. Just feeling those points of contact where the bed is holding you. You can start from one end of the body and just move slowly up the body. A real sense of points of contact, feeling held. And remembering that every time the mind wanders, and it will, we can just notice that the mind is no longer there, present with the feet. Just gently come back, coming back to this present moment. To mindful awareness, feet on the floor. And then if you'd like to, for a moment or two, just including a sense of the breath breathing. So perhaps just noticing the breath moving deep in the body. Breath coming in and breath going out. And the breath is a little bit like an anchor, a place to come back to. But the breath isn't friendly, it isn't helpful for everybody. So if you prefer to keep with your feet on the floor, that's fine. Mind wanders, coming back. Just coming back to your feet on the floor. Okay, so the whole idea is that practice is there when you need it. So opening your eyes, and here we are with I hope they're not all having chemo, but this cartoon is just showing that, you know, whatever the situation is, it might be cancer, it might be a thought about cancer, it might not be, it might be a worry about one of the children, or I don't know, a concern for the world with all climate change. You know, it might be a noisy neighbor. It could be all sorts of things that are troubling. But it might be about cancer, it might be about treatment. And if you can just put this into place, this very, very, very simple practice of feet on the floor, coming back, mind wanders, coming back, feet on the floor. So one of the things I just thought I'd share with you is this lovely picture of connecting to our common humanity. It's ever so helpful just to remember everybody else who's going through something similar to you. It's ever so helpful. So for those of you having chemo, or for those of you having radiotherapy, or those of you taking some drug treatment, just perhaps to take your pill with the thought of, like, there are others just like me. May they be okay? May I be okay? May they be okay? Yeah. It's very soothing, actually, when we offer kindness to others. Okay, so if you'd like to, you can close your eyes, and I'll read you this poem. So just let me tell you a little bit about it first. So this was written by a man called Pete, who is a psychiatrist and had a huge job. He had something like 4 hospitals to look after in South Africa, you know, and there were loads of people who were very traumatized. So he came on a training that I was doing in South Africa, and he wrote this poem at the end of the training. So if it's okay with you, just close your eyes and I'll read it to you. So this is Pete's poem. I came feeling that I carried the world on my shoulders. I leave knowing it is the earth that carries me. I came thinking awareness of the mind was important. I leave knowing awareness of the body is indispensable. I came as a follower of my thoughts. I leave in the service of my heart. The service of your heart. Hey, isn't that wonderful? He went back to his hospitals with the service of his heart. And just to finish off, I just want to share this book with you. So this is a book that I've written specifically for people with cancer, that goes through all the practices like feet on the floor. There are actually practices that you can download from it. So this is a book written for people like you, people like me. And let's come out of the share now. And sadly, we haven't got much time for questions, but it's lovely to see you. And if any of you would like to put anything in chat, any kind of message for me, or any comments about how you're feeling, and just to really, really encourage you that this very simple feet on the floor practice is like a first aid practice. It's very simple, but it's really important. Susan.